Who's looking to feel super old today? Because I'm about to tell you about the international prospect the Cardinals just signed, who is the son of a former Cardinals rival in the National League Central who has not been out of the game very long. What's going on, everyone, and welcome into this edition of b-schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer with you. It is Wednesday, January 15th, 2025. International signings are all the rage right now as teams are using their international bonus pool funds to sign the best prospects that they possibly can. Roki Sasaki, of course, the big-name pitcher out of Japan, is part of this process. The Cardinals are not in the running or in the final team list for Roki Sasaki. Seems like he's going to be a Dodger. That was probably likely all along, but what else is new? But the Cardinals are making a splash in the international waters as they have signed a Dominican outfielder named Royel Strop, who, if you are listening closely to the last name there, might sound like a familiar one, but it's going to make us feel, I think, a little bit old considering that. So we'll talk a little bit about where the Cardinals are at with their international signings that they are making over the course of the last few weeks. And this is, of course, the period where things really start to ramp up and you get pen to paper. And we'll talk as well about the weekend ahead as winter warm-up and Cardinals Caravan and the Baseball Writers Dinner all coming up this weekend. So exciting times. Baseball is just around the corner, and we'll be right here on b-schaeff Daily to tackle all of the happenings as news begins to ramp up. But real quick, before we get into the episode, I would like to thank Revival LLC and Smith Agri-Service for their partnership on this episode of b-schaeff Daily. Revival LLC specializes in passionately restoring log cabins to their former glory by studying traditional woodworking practices of the past and then utilizing them in our modern world to create genuine, timeless beauty. Their focus is preserving these cherished values in existing structures, whether it be your log cabin or your historic home, and then elevating them to a higher standard. So if you value craftsmanship, give Craft Revival LLC a call today. That's the number at 573-366-6563. They specialize in log cabin repairs, maintenance, porch remodeling, historic millwork, and now offer new timber-framed construction, keeping craftsmanship alive one project at a time since 2021. Craft Revival LLC and Smith Agri-Service is a family-owned independent retailer providing farmers in Missouri, Illinois, and Iowa with competitive pricing on Corteva, BASF, generic brand crop protection products, and Brevant corn and soybean seed. So scan the QR code on the YouTube graphic or text 202-988-1106, or you can email smithag@irtc.net for more information. So let's talk about Royel Strop, the left-handed hitting outfield prospect that the Cardinals have signed. According to Baseball America, the dollar amount on that signing, $1.4 million on the bonus there. I've seen it at $1.5 million reported elsewhere with $100,000 tuition as it was labeled. I'm not 100% familiar with all the inner workings of how it works out. That was Mike Rodriguez with that initial report yesterday. But the Cardinals getting a prospect with some upside. That's really what these international signings are all about. And a lot of times you might say, well, it's a 17-year-old kid, but that's sort of the way that this works. And it's a kid that'll, probably join the Cardinals Dominican Academy and will be training there until such time that he's ready to join stateside with the low A club, and the Dominican Summer League is where he'll probably begin. And sometimes those guys are signed and maybe they're not even quite ready to participate in those leagues. It just probably depends on the player and the maturation and how raw of a talent a player might be. But it's a son of Pedro Strop, the former Cubs reliever, who was well known for a couple of things. One being, and I saw a lot of commentary and people kind of making some jokes about it on Twitter, but the way he wore his hat was always of topic of conversation, whether it should have been or not. That was something that people talked about because he kind of cocked it to the side and had that look about him, his signature look. And sure enough, in the picture posted by Baseball America, it looks like his son Royel has kind of got a similar vibe going with his hat. I hope he wears it just the same way that Dad did when he was playing. I think that would be an absolute blast, me personally, just because I know a lot of Cardinals fans had stuff to say about the way Pedro Strop used to wear his hat, and I can't say you couldn't go back on the Twitter timelines and find me making comments or jokes about it, because it was something that was pretty central to his figure as a Cubs reliever. But Pedro Strop actually had a pretty good major league career. Last pitch, though, with the Cubs in 2021, only in a couple of games and a couple of innings that season. Spent the majority of his career with Chicago, was there from 2013 to 2019, had a brief stint with Cincinnati during the COVID season of 2020, was back with Chicago the following year. But my point with all this is to say Pedro Strop, not that old, so why do we have the Cardinals signing his son already when just 3-4 years ago he was still pitching in the big leagues? But Pedro Strop, only 39 years old, so if his son's 17, had his son when he was 22 or so. I don't know exactly. I think Royel Strop is 17. I saw that he was born in, actually it looks like June of 2008, so that would still make him 16 years old until later on this summer, and then he'll turn 17. So, yeah, a lot of times when you hear about these signings from the international bonus pool, it is 16, 17-year-old players who are, these are still kids, still developing for sure, not only physically, but in terms of their baseball experience and acumen. But a lot of times we do see these players that are signed for pretty significant bonus sums end up panning out a number of seasons later and becoming pretty noteworthy major league players. I can't remember the age that Fernando Tatis Jr. was signed initially, but that was certainly as a teenage prospect when that happened. Yeah, checking this out now, he was born in 1999, and Tatis Jr. signed with the White Sox as an international free agent, which is what this is, in 2015. So he would have been around 16 years old, give or take. That's the age that Royel Strop is now. And even though it may be a number of years before we hear of the progression for a prospect from this signing class, if you will, certainly there is proof in the pudding of guys in the past turning into really elite players who were signed in these ways. So this is a significant sort of time. It's just one of those where it gets difficult to project. You have to wait and see some of these kids get integrated into professional ball and work their way up. And then maybe as they 18, 19, 20 years old, you get a better idea for if they're progressing through single A, high A, double A, et cetera by then, and what type of major league prospects they could be down the road. But in the case of Strop, exciting outfielder. He's being lauded for his bat and what he can do with the bat. And then a lot of times these kids that grow stronger and get with a major league organization who's able to kind of help them with the workout regimens and things like that to even put more muscle on, those guys can sometimes really develop power later on in their career. So are we feeling old? I guess that's the question of the day as the Cardinals sign Royel Strop, outfielder out of the Dominican Republic, for $1.4 million, according to Baseball America. And Pedro Strop, his dad, who, like I said, you had him with the Cubs for a long, long time, was known for the way that he wore his hat, and I'm hoping his son does it the same way. But also the other most notable, perhaps, aspect of Pedro Strop that Cardinals fans may remember was the viral clip of Bob Costas, for whatever reason, made these comments as Joe Madden, manager of the Cubs at the time, in a 2-2 game in the bottom of the eighth, went to the mound to take Pedro Strop out of the contest. I'll just let you hear from Bob Costas here. I imagine a lot of folks have heard this, but I've seen some commentary this week on Twitter, people talking about the Royel Strop signing, where folks are maybe a little bit too new, too young to have remembered this. Had to have been a number of years ago. I don't have the exact year offhand, but handful or more years ago. And if folks are in their young 20s or maybe didn't follow Cardinal baseball at the time, might not be familiar with this clip, but it is an interesting one. So here it is.
It's not Basio this time, it's Madden, and that means a change. Mott is on his way in. Strop is on his way out, pointing toward the heavens. We can only ask or wonder that he is asking some departed relative for forgiveness for this atrocious performance.
And that was it. That was the whole, he was just doing that move where you point to the heavens, as a lot of players do after a performance, and that one maybe wasn't a great one. And so Bob Costas said that, and it went viral for the reasons that you may that you may think. So that's Pedro Strop in a nutshell, but he's got a son who is now part of the Cardinal organization. And by the way, I think Bob Costas was a little over the top with that one. You could kind of feel the gears turning in his mind with what he was going to say there, and certainly did go viral, but maybe it wasn't very nice. But anyway, Pedro Strop's son, Royel Strop, now a member of the Cardinals organization. I had said 17 years old earlier in the podcast. He's 16 years old, according to the birth date that I found in June of 2008. We're very early in 25, so I was just doing the math minus 17, and it unless you were born in the first 2 weeks of the month of January, you haven't had your birthday yet this year. So anyway, that's what's going on with the international pool. According to Baseball America as well, the Cardinals have a number of international signings locked in, and their total looks to be $5.6 million, give or take. Kenley Hunter, another outfielder. Juan Rujano, Miguel Hernandez is a shortstop. Jefferson Portalitan, probably saying that wrong, is a shortstop. And Michael Cordero, a third baseman, listed, according to Baseball America, as the signings for the Cardinals in this international class. So don't really pretend that I have heard of a lot of these guys, but certainly Royel Strop, seemingly one of the bigger signings of the class because he's commanding that $1.4 or $1.5 million there by his lonesome, and hopefully somebody that a couple years down the road, we're talking about him moving up the Cardinals prospect board and turning into a guy that can handle the bat as an outfielder, left-handed swing. Be excited to see him as he progresses. But again, you got to be patient with a lot of these types of names that you're going to hear about from this international class just because they are usually 16, 17 years old. I think they've got to be 16 to sign, and so maybe that would be the reason that so many of them are exactly that age, because they're worthy of being signed before that, but you might have to wait till 16. I'm not as familiar as I'd like to be with all of that process, but that's kind of what's going on there. And then, of course, we're excited about the winter warm-up coming up this weekend at Busch Stadium / Ballpark Village in St. Louis. If you live in surrounding communities across the various states that exist within Cardinal Nation, you might have some Cardinal players and personnel, maybe coaches, maybe broadcasters coming to your neck of the woods. We just talked with John Rooney on KTGR today about the Cardinals Caravan stop going through mid-Missouri with Jefferson City and Columbia. Stops as part of that trek. Guys like Luke and Baker, Alec Burleson will be on that trip, as well as Jimmy Crooks was minor league player of the year for the Cardinals this past year. So folks in mid-Missouri getting a chance to see those guys. Let me know in the comments if you're heading to winter warm-up this weekend in St. Louis, or if you are in a surrounding area that has a caravan stop coming to you, and who you're most excited to see as part of that. It is a very exciting time of year. And of course, if you do happen to be going to winter warm-up, I believe there still might be some time to go to stlouisbbwaa.com and purchase tickets for the Baseball Writers Dinner that will be that Sunday night at the Missouri Athletic Club. It is going to be a fantastic time. You get a great steak dinner. You get a great program, including many current and former Cardinals. We're honoring the 1985 team, so a lot of folks from that team will be in attendance and will be interviewed on stage, things of that nature. Several awards that we're giving out. Guys like Brendan Donovan, Ryan Helsley, and many more will be there. So if you're interested in that and you go, I've never heard of this, what you got to do is either go to stlouisbbwaa.com, or honestly, the best way, I'll just set you up. If you want to send me a direct message on Twitter, b-schaefer12 is my Twitter handle. My DMs are open. Would love to get you set up if you're going to be in and around town. And if that's something that sounds interesting to you, the local Baseball Writers of America chapter in St. Louis puts this dinner on every year, and it is for a good cause, fundraising for journalism scholarships in our area, and that's something that our chapter really appreciates the opportunity to be able to help out with. So we do this dinner each and every year. That is going to do it, though, for this edition of the show. Appreciate you guys for dropping by and listening. More to come as winter warm-up will bring, hopefully, some storylines that we can dig into. I have a chance to talk with John Mozeliak during the interview sessions. We'll have a chance to hear from Molly Marmol on Monday. For those wondering, Chaim Bloom, not expected to be in attendance, so doubt we'll hear from him. But like we talked about in October, that was kind of the anticipation and the expectation for this season, that he would still kind of be behind the scenes and it would still be Mo's show. So if you want a chance to hear from those guys, just make sure you're locked in on the podcast over the weekend and beyond, as we will spend some time prior to spring training dissecting a lot of what we're going to hear this weekend. It's jam-packed. I call it the car wash, as we'll hear from so many players and coaches and managers and GMs and presidents of baseball operations at all. So appreciate you guys who will stay tuned in the weeks that come. And then hopefully that'll take us right into spring training, where I'm planning to be down there in Jupiter, Florida. And if you would like to be part of the partnership sponsorship team to help get me down to Jupiter, and if you remember last year, put together some great content for the YouTube channel, some behind the scenes sights and sounds. That was a series that kind of just happened organically as I took some videos down from the backfields and was able to post them. And Cardinals fans really seem to dig that. So it's something I'm hoping to be able to do a little bit of again this year, in addition to my work with KMOV and KTGR and the podcast while we're down there. So just make sure you guys are locked in, and wherever you get your podcasts, you can hear us. So thank you guys so much. And again, if you're a local business that would like to get involved from the partnership aspect of things, you can always send me a DM or an email, b-schaefer12@outlook.com. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.